everybody to Heart of the Wild, the show where we explore the wonders of wildlife, the beauty of animal behavior, and the people that are protecting our planet's most extraordinary creatures. I'm going to be honest with you. I would pretty much do anything for my dog. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know how much I talk about my dog, Eloise. And judging from the comments that I get from our listeners, many of you out there would pretty much do the same thing for your pet. So when it comes to your pet's nutrition, it feels like we've entered a little bit of a confusing era. We've got raw food, vegan food, freeze-dried food, canned food, and the list goes on and on and on. So today, I am so excited because we're going to be talking about what our pets are actually eating. We're going to be talking about what they need to thrive, how they're cutting through the noise of trends and labels and well-meaning advice. And to help us do that, we have got someone that is the best of the best around pet nutrition. She's a pet nutritionist who's here to make animal nutrition make sense for you. Anna Webb is a natural canine nutritionist. She studied with the College of Integrated Veterinary Studies. She's also a broadcaster, an animal nutritionist, and a behavioral pet expert. She contributes regularly to many national media contributions in England, including ITV, the BBC, Sky, and various radio stations. She also has her own amazing podcast, which I've listened to many times, called A Dog's Life with Anna Webb. Anna has been very passionate about animal welfare from an early age. It runs in her family. Her father worked for the Shropshire branch of the RSPCA, so she knows what it's like to love animals. And on top of all of that, she's an ambassador for charities including All Dogs Matter, and she supports and is involved with the Dog Advocacy Ireland. So, without further ado, please welcome Anna Webb.
Hi, Diana. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Happy that you're here.
So happy.
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to dive right in, Anna.
Let's go.
Because you've got so much amazing knowledge to share, and I can't wait. So as I said before we got started, there's a lot of confusion around dog nutrition. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you think it's so confusing right now for pet parents and dog parents around nutrition and what we're feeding our pets.
Sure, absolutely. I think at the moment there's a lot of quite new pet parents, through the pandemic, dog ownership absolutely soared. According to the UK Pet Food Association, who kind of monitors food in the UK, there are now 15 million dogs living in the UK.
I wonder how many pets that is per person, probably.
I think it's something like 60% of all households.
Okay.
So that is a big growth, exponential.
Yeah.
And no wonder it's so confusing for people because, there's food in a bag, there's food in a tin, there's food in a tray, there's frozen food, there's lightly cooked food, there's raw food, so where do people begin, and I do understand it must be really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's to understand really what a dog needs. And that's where I think there's quite a lot of kind of, confusion. So a lot of people, I always say to people with my training hat on as well, please, don't think of your dog as a little person in a furry suit. So dogs need to have nutrition that's really quite different from a human's.
Okay. I mean, that makes so much sense. And it is hard because of any animal, I think we anthropomorphize, and I always mess that word up.
And it's so hard, that word.
It is. We always do that to dogs more than anything because they are, and cats even, but they are the ones that are living with us that we are, so tied to and connected with in our homes. We love them so much, and they kind of feel like our little babies. We say fur child all the time. You hear that being used all the time. So it is something that I think probably happens more than any other animal out there. But to your point, their biological makeup is so much different than a human's biological makeup, and we have to remember that.
Absolutely, particularly when it comes to their digestion. You've got to remember they're on 4 feet, but also that dogs are primary carnivores. Everything physiologically backs all this up. Just look at, I know you've got a lovely dog called Eloise, so when you go home this evening, just check out her teeth. You'll see these big canines, upper and lower canines that are meant for ripping meat, as maybe as gross as it might sound to some listeners, these are not teeth that are meant for grinding like a rabbit's teeth, for example. They're meant for biting through meat.
Okay, good. I'm going to check that out more closely when I can hold
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And then you've got the big molars at the back that are meant then just to kind of grind it all down and everything. But that's an important thing. And also their digestive system is so much shorter than ours. We're omnivorous. So we're like, you know, chimpanzees and gorillas that can eat anything from meat to vegetables and you know, so on, because we've got a very long digestive tract. But cats and dogs have a very short digestive tract that's highly acidic, unlike ours. Ours is way more alkaline. So they are meant to digest a lot of meat. That's what they were born to do. So dogs that aren't eating a lot of meat, this is when you see a lot of illness develop in dogs. You know, we know that lots of dogs are very itchy at the moment. Skin conditions are, you know, quite common now in dogs. And this is all down, or often is down to not feeding as nature intended.
I think a lot of people out there that have animals that are facing some of these things, and I face these myself. I'm not sure if you have with them. No, you've got an amazing assortment of pets as well in terms of cats and dogs.
Well, I really don't want people to think that, you know, I've got loads and loads. I've got one cat that I love very much. I think I will always from now have a cat in my life. They're very special in themselves. Hopefully we can do a podcast just about cats actually one day, because I would love that because they are extraordinary. But dogs are, you know, been part of my life all my life. You know, I was going to Crufts, I'm quite proud to say it, when I was 8, and I began, you know, showing a Tibetan Spaniel, and so dogs have really been part of my life, and that's why I love them. They are man's best friend, and I just think we have a duty of care to our dogs on all levels to give them the best life, which is what pet parents want to do. So I feel this confusion of all these different types of food, it's not helpful, but I do appreciate that to feed, you know, fresh, you need freezer space.
Okay, so getting in a bit more to the frozen foods. Yeah, and I think if people out there are, you know, listening in and hearing what you're saying about having a dog with, you know, itchy skin or having some of these conditions, I would venture to say many people have experienced some of these issues, have taken their dog to the vet for an assortment of these issues. I know we're talking a little bit about, you know, frozen foods. I would be curious too if you can also get into a little bit more of like a balanced diet, what we can do to ensure that we're eluding some of these overarching behaviors, so to speak, or conditions that we might see. How can we feed a balanced diet and help alleviate some of those things?
Sure. Well, it's so easy. I mean, for me, you know, many of these dry foods, you know, whether it's freeze-dried, cold-pressed, or, you know, the kibble-based foods, they're very high glycemic. So it means that the ingredients that's used to kind of make these biscuity type shapes contains ingredients, you know, that aren't totally appropriate for a dog to eat. So you're talking about maybe barley in there, maybe sort of peas in there, maybe some wheat in there, you know, to bind ingredients that maybe in some cases, you know, it might have lots of flashy artwork on the front of these things. These are the brands that often advertise on television because they do have these budgets. They'll be on YouTube flashing in as you're watching your favourite series on YouTube, because these firms have a lot of budget, arguably because the ingredients maybe isn't as expensive or as appropriate perhaps that you'd hope would be in these products than are in other products.
Interesting. Okay.
I hope I've treaded carefully there, Diana.
I know what you're saying. You know, I think hopefully listeners out there can understand what we're saying. The big budgets don't always mean the best ingredients, which is a very fair, you know, understood. I got that. I think when we're talking about ingredients, are there any non-negotiable ingredients or nutrients to look for as a pet parent to know that we're feeding them the best food that we can be?
Absolutely. It's a 4-letter word, actually, Diana.
Okay. There's few 4-letter words that spring to mind.
Don't worry, it's not one of those 4-letter words.
Okay.
It's like a simple 4-letter word. It's called meat.
Meat. We love it. That's a good approved 4-letter word.
It is indeed. Meat. You know, dogs need, as primary carnivores, to eat a lot of meat.
Okay.
So the main ingredient in your bowl will be meat.
Okay. For some, I'm thinking of cheeses because I just love cheese so much.
Cheese, you know, Yeah. Cheese is great as like a filler in an enrichment toy. By all means, a little bit of cheese. There's nothing wrong with it. I use mild cheddar as a Kong-shaped, beehive-shaped toy. You know, and a lot. That's fine because guess what? Cheese is animal protein and animal fat. So this is what we are looking for in our meat. Animal protein, of course, and animal fat. And this is what dogs absolutely absorb and digest really easily. They're meant to digest this. This is what their body wants and their body needs. And if we're thinking, you know, we're feeding dogs for optimum health, which is what we all really do want to do, we need to feed moisture. Because just as we're 80% water, you know, that's the funny thing. You're 80% water, Diana, so am I. So are dogs. If we were just eating food that had no moisture in it, day in, day out, we'd be really kind of thirsty. It would, you know, dehydrate us. Sure, dogs make up for it. They can drink a lot of water. But if you look at animals in the wild, which I know you have done a lot on this podcast, you look at a lion, there isn't a lot of water around in you know, the desert or in, you know,
in the bush.
In the bush, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, in the bush. So where do they get their moisture from? Well, you know, they'll get it, horrible to say, but from the insides of zebra. And you'll notice that when they're eating the zebra, they're going straight for the stomach.
Okay. So that moisture element, and I guess I know you've talked about this in your podcast. Ultimately, dogs they derive from wild animals. That was how they've evolved, and we've domesticated them. But ultimately, when you think about the nutritional element of dogs, you are thinking about their sort of wild origins.
Their ancestral roots. I mean, absolutely. I mean, just as we're 99% monkey, you know, dogs are 99.9% wolf still in their DNA, which is extraordinary when you think of little Eloise and I think of my little Mr. Binks at home, that he could be so closely related to such a wonderful animal as a wolf. I'm a great fan of them, obviously. You'll see a wolf loving to eat raw meat and bones, you know, and thriving on it as a result.
Okay. Well, that is fascinating. And I wonder, as you're talking about like putting moisture into the food and having dryness in a food and thinking about the way people are typically feeding their dogs, which I think about when I first got Eloise and some of the advice I was given. It seemed like the food was typically bland and didn't have much variety. And I wonder if you feel dogs do need variety, if they care about that sort of thing, or is it my own personal guilt coming into play that I feel bad that I'm feeding her the same thing over and over again, or I was, now I don't do that anymore. But in your perspective, is that something that matters? Absolutely, it does actually, because every meat has its own kind of spectrum of protein. So lamb is slightly different, obviously, from beef, from pork, chicken, turkey, and so on. So yes, variety is important, and I'll tell you why. Because of the slightly different composition of all meats, certain meats there's more fat in it than others. It's all about the microbiome, which is still a really massive evolving area of science. I mean, it was only really in 2014 that people started to realize that the microbiome is this thin lining in the small intestine that, you know, that contains trillions and trillions of different bacteria and their purpose in life. They're all in us at the moment. It's so funny to think of it, Diana. You know, hello. They're wiggling around. Hello, microbiome, because the microbiome's triggering all of these immune responses, you see. So, and this is when, of course, when the microbiome isn't working, you know, in fifth gear, if you like, this is when some deficiencies happen in the immune system. This is when illness and disease can begin. So it's very important to fuel the microbiome, and the microbiome loves variety. It loves different amino acids, different proteins, and this is what the dog is absorbing really efficiently into their system. So their digestion is so different from ours. You know, for example, we can digest complex carbohydrates really efficiently because we have a whole heap of amylase, the sugar digesting enzyme that begins in our mouth, in our saliva. We've got it in our saliva. So we can eat the baked potatoes, the pasta, the rice, you know, bring it on. Give me French fries 10
French
times
fries,
a day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is all great for us. But But dogs don't secrete amylase. They only secrete a tiny amount, but all the way down in the pancreas, okay, where they've got the protease enzyme that digests the protein, amylase for the sugars, and lipase for the fats, okay, but a small amount. So by overloading with complex carbohydrates, it's putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on the digestive system, and these nutrients are not naturally absorbed by a canine microbiome. So the microbiome will be becoming a little bit depleted, if you like, rather than if we were feeding a lot of that four-letter word, which is meat. Meat and offal. So meat should be about 80% of the bowl. Offal, so a bit of liver, maybe a little bit of heart, a little bit of kidney mixed in there, should be about 10% of the bowl. But yes, they can absorb botanicals, provided the botanicals, say like broccoli. You know, broccoli, fabulous green leaf vegetable. Kale, absolutely wonderful. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. I'm a great fan of the berries. Because see, the thing is as well with dogs, they're very clever. You know, they've adapted to survive. They do make their own vitamin C. Now, we don't make our own vitamin C, so that's another huge difference in the digestive system, really, and the whole physiology and biology between us. But to boost their vitamin C can't hurt, particularly in this world we're living in, where, you know, ultimately the soil isn't perhaps what it was 100 years ago. We use a lot of insecticides and pesticides now, which weren't around before. So we have to bear in mind air quality maybe isn't what it was once before.
Especially in the cities.
Well, especially in the cities. Yeah. But I also believe, though, you know, in the countryside, I lived in the countryside just for 2 years, actually, Diana. I don't think I've told you about my little escape from London, which didn't go awfully well because I moved back again.
You're back here.
I'm back here.
I was thinking that. I'm like, oh, well, she's back, so I wonder.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, I thought, oh my gosh, these fields, they're all so absolutely lovely. Until I saw this tractor, you know, kind of spraying all this stuff. So I rang my friend and I said, oh, it's so lovely. I saw the farmer, I'm so naive, watering the crops earlier. And then my friend...
pesticide.
Yeah. She said, I don't think it was water, Anna. I'm like, well, what was it then? And so after that, I couldn't take my dog Molly, my first miniature bull terrier, down to those fields because that was actually the point where I was doing all my study. So we walked somewhere else where there were none of this going on. So that, you see, is a big eye-opener. In a way, it was an eye-opener for me. So these fields, they were crop fields, where the soil had all of this stuff in it.
I wouldn't have thought that either.
Really?
No, I've never lived in the countryside though. But...
No, you're sensible. I mean, I'm sorry for anyone listening who does live in the country. Look, you know, I'm sure it's okay, really.
I mean, my family lives in a countryside area and absolutely loves it. I think there's very, you know, people really love it or they really prefer an urban area.
Sure. So
there's space for both, absolutely. My mind is blown by so many things that you've just said, frankly. First of all, the vitamin C piece. I feel like no wonder why dogs are just so adorable. I have to use vitamin C, as you said, serums because for my skin, because we don't make any of it. We don't make
it. So it is different. So again, going back to this thing, they're not little people in a furry suit, you know, so on so many levels.
Yes. Lucky them to make their own vitamin C, would love that. But then the other thing that I think is more crazy is the carbohydrate piece. Because my whole dog ownership life, which is my whole life, my family had 3 dogs growing up. Then I had, Eloise is the only dog that I've had and owned on my own. But I've always been told that our dogs were allergic to carbohydrates. You know, they're allergic to grains, they're allergic to different types of grains, etc. You know, that we've been told to do different types of food elimination tests and things.
Yeah.
I never knew. And I always use anecdotal evidence in certain instances of my own experiences because I imagine others that are listening might be experiencing the same things or been hearing the same things.
Sure.
And I just can't imagine that other people haven't been told that their dog was allergic when in reality, dogs just can't break down the carbohydrates.
Exactly. So they're not really allergic. They just can't break it down. It's an eye-opener. So this is why we go back to that 4-letter word again, meat. And this is, as I just explained, the bowl, 70 to 80% should be meat. And this can be lightly cooked, sure, at home, by all means. But when I say lightly cooked, I mean like to pop it into, I don't do a lot of cooking, actually, Diana, so I'm not sure what these
Very Carrie Bradshaw.
Very Carrie. You put it in the oven, and then you have the oven on a very low heat. So you kind of braise it in the oven, so you don't get a steak and flash fry it. And steak's a very good ingredient for your dog, but don't do that flash fry thing, because that's extreme heat, and that will be taking some of the nutrients out big time. So to cook it very slowly on a super low heat, so that the juices of the meat come out into, one of those bowls that you put in the oven with food in it to cook.
I think when you're talking about this style of cooking, how can you ensure that, and maybe this is an odd question, but how can you ensure that the meat grade is good enough for the dog? And I know we keep talking about humans aren't dogs, so I think about, not pathogens, but like...
really good question.
Foodborne pathogens and things like that.
This is an essential question to ask. Thank you, Diana. Okay, so it's very important to find a good supplier.
Okay.
A supplier that really is fit for purpose, using a term you use for different breeds of dogs, that a border collie is fit for purpose to herd up sheep. My miniature bull terrier would not be fit for purpose for that particular role in life, to be honest with you. She cause chaos in a fun way, to be honest with you. So
maybe her purpose is to just snuggle with you and not
to make people laugh.
Yeah,
and
have
purpose.
fun.
They're natural comedians. Actually, the American Kennel Club, diversing slightly, calls the bull terrier a toddler. Well, actually does call the bull terrier. Here we go. This is
hilarious.
Calls them a toddler in a furry suit.
Huge
irony to absolutely everything I've just said. So, but she is definitely a primary carnivore, and I must say that Prudence does consume a lot of meat, despite this funny anecdote. But they are very unusual dogs. They're not for everyone, but they are great fun. And hopefully someone listening has a bull terrier.
Let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know, please. Yes. So the quality of the meat is essential. I like to go for free range or organic. I choose my supplier of my own dog food very, very carefully. Go, for companies that have true credentials, because the problem is at the moment about 80% of dogs in the UK are eating bags or tins. So only about 20% of the dogs out of these 15 million dogs are actually eating fresh, either lightly cooked, and there are some big brands now that have done very well in the market to offer this offering. And then as part of that 20% is the raw food feeding community, which, I've been involved with now since 2002, and kind of prior to that with our dogs as family dogs. We fed them a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but they did eat a lot of that 4-letter word meat. So it was very normal for me to segue with Molly, my first miniature bull terrier, to feeding her a raw, balanced and complete diet. But back in 2002, interestingly, the balanced and complete options that we have got on the market today didn't exist. So you kind of had to DIY it, use your butcher, get cuts of meat. So it was to go to a good butcher. I was very fortunate. I was living, you'll know, Lamb's Conduit Street at the time with Molly as a puppy. I loved living there. And we had an amazing butcher just up the road. So for me, it was so easy to do this. But, again, in the supermarket shelves, choose the free range, the grass-fed beef is very important. Ideally, you want it grass-fed and grass-finished. Now, to find grass-finished is actually more difficult. So, again, it's to trust the supplier. I mean, the supplier I use at the moment, a wonderful brand called Raw. They're based up in Yorkshire. They really pride themselves on also, in being sustainable, because there's a lot of argument that all this raw food feeding, we mustn't have meat, we mustn't have cows in the field. There's so much going on at the moment with the conversation on climate change as well. And should we all eat crops the whole time, and cows, they emit loads of CO2 and so on. There's this whole balance, but all of this has to be offset. And certainly this company does that with solar power, plastic-free packaging. You wouldn't believe it. Huge, huge effort to offset and balance. But then, of course, we have to offset and balance with what dogs bring us, you know, in companionship. They help the lonely. They give us exercise. They take us out into nature. You know, they're great for our mental health. This is something that all has to go into this equation. If listeners are thinking, yeah, but hang on, meat. But this is all part of it. So it's all about offsetting and balancing.
Okay, that's great to know. And also nice to hear about a sustainable brand always. I wonder for people that live, we have a global audience, so people that live outside of the UK as well, and for anyone in the UK thinking about convenience and price point.
Sure.
How do you feel about options that allow for those things that, and are there any other things that offset, you know, utilizing real meat, utilizing raw meat, utilizing local suppliers, or even your grocery stores, right? Are there other benefits to that, to keeping your dog as healthy as possible from a fiscal standpoint? Because it's a difficult economic market right now. So I understand that that's probably top on a lot of people's minds.
No, absolutely. Well, I don't find feeding fresh actually that expensive. You look at some of these brands and they're not cheap. It is a worry actually at the moment. I mean, I do, as you mentioned in a lovely intro, I do help All Dogs Matter, which is a London-based rehoming charity. Very proud to work with Ira Moss and her team. But, you know, the story there is bleak. I hate to put a sort of downer on the episode, but apparently Ira's getting like 40 phone calls a day, people wanting to relinquish their dogs. And in the majority of cases, it is down to finance.
Yeah.
And it's not all related just to food. I mean, we have to factor in here, you know, veterinary bills and so on. They really are peaking at the moment, you know, really peaking. I mean, I've seen that kind of peak and peak and peak for the last, you know, 20 plus years. So that's one aspect. For me, it's about feeding for optimum health so that trips to the vet can be minimized or you don't have to go at all, hopefully. Because the benefits as well are so many with feeding fresh in that teeth, for example. Something not many people know, so here's another nugget, that a dog's tongue can't move from side to side like ours. That's another key.
I didn't know that.
Physiological difference. So, you know, when you get a bit of cream cracker or something, maybe stuck, you wouldn't do it in a nice restaurant, you know, but you know, dogs obviously haven't got like a finger to kind of go and get it out. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
So these biscuits get stuck in the dog's teeth. Their tongue can't go.
I see.
Yeah. So over time, this causes tooth decay. Obviously, we all have to go to the dentist. So, and the irony is those procedures on the whole, teeth aren't often, sometimes they are, but not mostly covered by insurance. Mm-hmm. So that, and it involves a general anaesthetic. It's not like when we go to the hygienist, you know, we can do it and we're awake, as grim as it can be.
Sometimes I wish I was sleeping for those.
Oh, no, same here. No, don't. I had one the week before last, and honestly, it took me 3 days to recover. I couldn't eat properly for 3 days. But she's a brilliant hygienist. I can give you the contact if you. She's absolutely brilliant. Anyway,
oh, thank you.
No, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But so therein is one problem. So the idea is to feed for optimum health. And it's also when, you know, you look at ingredients, it's very important, I think, in a human sphere to look at the ingredients in whatever you're buying. And if you see something that you don't actually know what it is in the ingredients, you know, stop. Wait a minute, quickly Google, you know, check it out. I mean, you might see something called meat meal and you might be, well, that sounds a bit odd. Google it.
Okay. I actually think this is a good opportunity for listeners to, that sounds like, stop, wait a minute, fill my cup, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so that's what you think about when you now look at dog food. Just put that in your head and know that if you don't recognize any of the ingredients, stop, wait a minute. You're not going to believe this, but we are almost at time. So I feel like this just flew by. There's so much more that we could talk about. So we're going to have to do a part 2. But for our last question, I want to ask you what you're most hopeful for the future of dog nutrition. There's so much discussion around technology and technological advances. Is there anything in that sort of framework, or is it just more or less like just general hope for dog nutrition and maybe not anything about tech.
Yeah, I'm not the greatest fan of tech, let's put it that way. I think dogs should be an antidote for technology, which I feel is overwhelming our lives, left, right and centre at the moment. So I look to my own dogs as release and relief from technology, I'll be honest. My hope is that people do understand this whole concept. They are not little people in a furry suit. Understand that, transfer your own values of eating that maybe is going less from popping cellophane and popping it into the microwave. You're looking more at fresh for yourself. We're going more 5 a day. To transfer that to your dog in line with what a dog should eat, that 4-letter word, which is meat. And source a great supplier, feel part of a community that is looking for health from the inside out.
I love that thinking, especially with all the health trends that we see. And as I said, like all of the tech, I love thinking about just going back to the basics and really looking at what the dog needs from the very beginning of time with dogs, right? Like,
right.
We're just taking all the trendy things away.
I know, exactly. It's a multi-billion business, the pet food sector. Like, okay, So let's strip it back. What does your dog need to thrive?
Love that. Great advice. And I'm not going to let you off the hook before we end.
I know.
I'm so excited about this. For anyone who's listened before, you know that the best segment is when we try to stump our guests to hear an animal noise and guess what the animal is. So we are going to see what Anna thinks about this sound. And I'm gonna be honest, it's a bit of a difficult one, but it's in the general Canis themed world.
Okay.
Here we go. Let me know if you need any hints.
I think I know what it might be.
Okay.
But it might be wrong.
That's okay. It's fine if it's wrong.
No, I hate getting things wrong. You know what I mean? I'm quite competitive.
It's okay, I know. That's fair.
It's because of the chattering.
This is a fun one. This is a fun.
It's because of the chattering. Hyena.
It's so close.
Oh, no.
It's so close.
Well
also,
done.
the last episode, I'm going to double check that this isn't the same thing, because the last episode, for anyone listening, it was the same thing. He said one thing, and I was like, no, but it ended up being the same thing. They're slightly different. Oh, thank God. But do you want to have one more guess? It's very similar. That was a great guess.
Well, if it is Canis familiaris, family, I'm trying to think. What's another wild type of... the only other then is... yes, but hang on a minute. When I said to someone recently about the wild dogs of Africa... Maybe it is a wild dog.
Yes! It is! It's a wild dog!
High five!
Yeah! Okay! I was like, yes! Stick with that lane of thinking.
I love
amazing.
them, the painted dogs.
Yes.
I mean, they're painted.
Yes.
I mean, oh my. I mean, I would... Can you imagine having one of those? No,
I mean, it'd be
not.
terrifying. We did a whole episode on wild dogs. If you haven't listened to it, definitely give it a listen.
Oh my gosh, I'm so going to. I didn't
please
know
do.
Oh my gosh.
It is such a good one. And they're gorgeous, but they're terrifying. So
they're quite big.
Yes, and they're
Super
very endangered.
Yeah.
So and when you were talking about domestic dog's back teeth, the wild dog have even more. Like, they're very different in terms of their development of their teeth to rip through meat.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
more
even
so.
More. Well, they need to, because also time is against them as well. My guess is there'll be the hyenas lurking around. They're the ultimate scavengers, aren't they? So they're the lazy people. They get what the others have caught, and they scare people off, and they're pretty scary as well. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to meet one of those down a lane on a dark night.
No, and the way that I'm going down a rabbit hole, and I swear I'm going to get back to what we were originally talking about, but the way that they hunt wild dogs is in what's called a peloton. So they work together in this sort of like peloton circular motion
Wow.
to hunt as a group. And they take down huge, like, prey that's much bigger, much faster, etc.
Wolves, they also hunt in a pack, and they have their pack leaders. It's an alpha female. That wolves are they're not patriarchal; they're matriarchal.
Love that.
In fact, dogs are matriarchal. So, and dogs do go by age rather than beauty. Age is before beauty in dogs.
Well, we know that dogs are the smartest.
We do,
because frankly, wisdom and age should trump beauty. Even though we've got both, but you know.
Sorry. I think I'm a bit older than you, Diana, but listen, that's all great. I agree. Age is but a number. But yeah, they're matriarchal. Dogs are matriarchal, whereas us humans, we're still, I feel, in a patriarchal world.
Yeah, yes. But we have to listen to dogs, you know.
Absolutely.
They know what's going on.
They know it all.
Oh, Anna, thank you so much for being here. This was such a great chat. I feel like it went by so quickly. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. For more from Anna Webb, please check out her podcast, A Dog's Life with Anna Webb. It's so good. And for more from Heart of the Wild, please check out our socials, heartofthewild.pod. And as always, let the Heart of the Wild inspire not just awe, but action.
I love that. Thank you so much, Diana, for joining me. And I hope you'll join me on A Dog's Life very soon.
Would love that. Thank you, and see you all soon. Bye.